It would be a source hunter. It would be my sincerest honor. Take this rune and use it to...
We best be on our way then. The spring and autumn kingdoms will rule themselves, you know. We are God's class Sylvan Source Hunter.
I don't know how long she'll last within that ice. There must be a way.
This is your White Witch, then. And you're sure you want to free her, are you? Even our mad Boreas wouldn't have wasted such precious ice on a petty criminal. But I am in your debt, and I would be remiss not to honor your request. Shield your eyes, Source Hunter.
Gods, it's colder than a witch's teat. How very callous of Leandra to entower her only sister in a barren tundra for eternity.
Icara, you're all right? The ice, King Boreas, and your sister. What a frigid hell you've endured.
And yet not even a frigid hell like this could induce you to put on a shirt, could it, Ahu? My old friend, surely I have you to thank for my salvation.
That honor goes to a pair of talented source hunters, actually. If not for their efforts, I'd be quite uselessly prowling around your prison still.
Then perhaps I ought to address my savior directly. Source Hunter, is that the masquerade? Well, what a motley crew we are. Isn't there somewhere a bit warmer we might discuss matters? Oh, yes, I suppose I am. But I do prefer my given name. Icara, that is. Charmed. But I hope I haven't disappointed my own hero. Am I just as white and witchy as you'd hoped? Ah, yes, of course. Do pardon me. I didn't mean to imply you were very clearly eternal beings in the guise of minor mortals. Not at all. Please, let's do carry on. First things first, Source Hunter. For my freedom, I owe you every imaginable thanks. My soul had withered in this prison, and I might not have survived much longer without your help. Now, about the culprits. My corrupted sister and the mad Winter King. When I realized exactly where, and to whom Leandra was consigning me, I was certain I'd never enjoy the sun's warmth again. But neither she nor I anticipated the Source Hunter. That was her mistake, and my blessing. I never would have imagined Leandra capable of dealing with the likes of Boreas, but she has changed into someone I hardly recognize anymore. I take no pleasure in the memory of that night. The thought of hurting anyone or anything is abhorrent to me. But in this case, I judged it necessary. If you've come this far, I trust you've learned that the Counselor was far from a humble civil servant. This doesn't excuse my behavior, but perhaps it can help to explain it. It's a sordid story, to be perfectly frank. Two sisters, a philanderous, treacherous wizard, death and mayhem. Are you sure you're interested in such things? The sparkle in your eye belies your better nature, Source Hunter. Now I know that it is your duty to get to the heart of this. And, in truth, the events of that night were but one part of a larger and much darker matter. A matter in which I'll dare to beg your assistance. before we're through with one another. Now that terrible night. One night, as I slept, I had a sudden revelation. No dream, but a vision. My sister Leandra and my lover Zandalor. I didn't understand, but I recognized their location. Syceel's King Crab Inn. I arrived and looked through their window, but inside, everything was wrong. Leandra had fled, and Councillor Jake stood over the wizard, a knife in his hand and hate in his eyes. As I watched, he drove the dagger deep into Zandalor's heart, and I was too late to stop him. In that moment, I broke. I saw before me not a man, not even a beast, but evil incarnate. And I used Source to slay him. On the floor lay Zandalor. In my hands, I held Jake's life force. I had sworn never to use Source, but I couldn't walk away. And so I did the unthinkable. I used the Councillor's life to save Zandalor's. He was alive, but only just. Betrayal. Murder. Source. We were all of us guilty now. If you were any other Source Hunter, I suppose you'd strike me down where I stand after that terrible admission. Fortunately for us both, you are no other Source Hunter. My own little sister, if you can imagine it. She was always the more ambitious, the more exacting of us, and she had no fear of the darkness that so often accompanies Source. Her collusion with King Boreas in imprisoning me here confirms my worst fears. She is planning something far greater than I could have anticipated. For this reason, and with a heavy heart, I must ask you, Source Hunter, to find out how far exactly Leandra has become entwined in the dark arts. I hate to extend my own invitation, Source Hunter, but I believe I ought to accompany you to Zigzax's hideout. Presumptuous, yes, but I'd recognize the imp's essence just about anywhere. Both he and you must learn more about the darkness that has extended itself into our dearest Rivellon. And I believe I know where we must begin. Ah, but unless that's a bear flailing through the threads of time, I do believe Master Zigzax is on his way. Make way, Source Hunter, landing in 3, 2...
Hunters, you've done it! Icara is free! Ah, what good it does my impish heart to see her safe and bright as ever! We have much to discuss. Come one and all to the end of time. A spot of something warm and the soft glow of the tapestry ought to do us all a bit of good, Icara, now, if we're done playing hide-and-seek, let's not waste a jot more time. Oh, I just can't wait to pick your every synapse.
After you, Master Zigzax.
We've solved the murder and caught the culprit, yet this case feels anything but closed.
There's more to this crime than simple fact. Killing a killer is hardly the same as killing an innocent, after all.
We'll have to learn more before we can assess Icara's true guilt in this matter. Fortunately, she seems quite eager to tell us more about this entire dark affair.
Master Imp. Very, very cold. You both puzzle and delight me, Sir Arhin. To be man and cat. I see Master Zigzags has upgraded from his shabby little hut at the edge of the hour, from the fairy dimension to the, space-time weaver hunter imp one. What do you call this place again? Ha! Is that so? It seems I have my share to learn about the magical world yet. The end of time. Well, suddenly your association with Master Zigzags makes sense. Well, I must say, it's no small relief to find myself in a safe haven among such allies. I believe the answer to that begins centuries ago, when your order was still cutting down so-called dark magicians by the dozens. Ours was a family of born sorcerers, you see. It was in our blood to interact with Source. But our parents were determined to curb the power within us. Still, their meekness wouldn't save them from the Source Hunters. I am. But there is more to our kind than they teach at your academy. Source isn't only blood and madness. It's like lightning, an exquisite current of great power. We sorcerers are like metal steeples. Source is drawn to us and it flows through us. But what so many fail to understand is that Source can be controlled. The power-drunk through history have abused it, and all the world's sorcerers have borne terrible consequences. Tell me, Source Hunter, in all your hours studying the arcane arts, did your great masters ever suggest that perhaps not all sorcerers were evil? Did you ever hear, even once, that some of us were weak and gentle? That we could be simple forest folk healing the sick and frozen each winter? No. I doubt also that they'd mention that one day this hunt of yours would birth a broken soul powerful enough to inch all of Rivellon toward oblivion. No, that would be going too far and eschewing my own responsibility. I believe Leandra's long fall down did begin at the hands of some of your own order, but it was I who sparked all of this. They came on a quiet morning. My mother was wild with fright and commanded me to hide myself and Leandra outside, among the trees. Even at that young age, we knew not to question her. We climbed high into the branches of a nearby tree, and before we could look away, our parents were cut down without ceremony before our door. The Source Hunters sauntered away, wiping their blades with pride. 2 more sorcerers dead, a job well done. From that moment on, everything was different. As we trembled in that tree, our fear and our desperation was so potent that the magic within us began to weave together. Our souls became forged together, our bond unbreakable. We would survive, thrive even, within those woods, never speaking to outsiders. Our soul forge meant that if one of us were to die, the other would instantly perish too. We kept one another close. Leandra's capacity was enormous. Source didn't frighten her, and she delved into that dark well with terrible regularity. I did my best to guide her, but she fast outgrew my admonitions. My sister and I were mired in a solitary existence, witches among the trees when Zandalor came. Leandra especially couldn't leave him be. He was a feast of information, and she wouldn't rest until she'd absorbed every bit of knowledge he offered. Their days were spent on charms, hexes, and the like. At night, Leandra would wander off to practice what she'd learned, and Zandalor and I would settle into our quiet tasks, side by side. We were a content trio, the 3 of us, but base impulse would undo us. As you know, Leandra and I were soul-forged. This offered us a window into one another's souls. I knew Leandra had developed feelings for Zandalor, and she knew I had too. But it was me to whom he confessed his love. Those quiet evenings together had captured his heart, as they had mine. Her heart broke the moment we announced our new attachment, and I felt the pain of it as sharply as a knife. She fled, without a word, and I didn't see her for 2 terrible years. My connection to her, our soul forge, grew weaker. It was as though some third entity, a parasite, We're atop our souls, sucking the strength from it day by day. I believe that our soul forge has been damaged. By what? I can only guess. The fraying of the bond between us has left Leandra adrift in a well of sorrow she truly believes will never end. What she needs is a hand, my hand, out of this abyss. If our soul forge is repaired, I am certain she'll cease blazing this path of destruction. I cannot condone the terrible things she's done, but I can seek to understand them. With our soul forge in such tatters, I believe Leandra is adrift in the not at all inconsiderable sorrows of our lives. What's more, I sense a terrible force bearing down upon the bond between us. It is hungry, and it consumes ever more of Leandra's mind and soul. I cannot say exactly what this force might be, but I'm certain it's both driving me out and driving Leandra on. If I could only repair the forge, I'm certain she'd put a stop to this madness. We've a single order of business first and foremost. Leandra is gathering an army, and I fear we'll have to get through it if we wish to find her. But first, we must learn more about Leandra's plans. How many of these so-called Immaculates does she have in her palm, and to what end is she directing them? You must venture into the inner sanctum of one of the sacred Immaculate temples in Lucula Forest. Leandra has hidden it well, but within its deepest depths you'll find a hidden library. What's inside I cannot say, but I know something of great value to her is kept within. The Immaculates are no invention of Leandra's, though styling herself as its so-called conduit is, I must say, rather clever. They were an ancient religious group, countless sorcerers among them numbering hundreds of thousands before the death of Brachus Rex and the abolishment of Source. Leandra's little cult has retaken this immaculate banner and repurposed the ancient Immaculate temples after their own fashion. The temple you must find is particularly well hidden. You'll have to become an Immaculate yourself in order to gain access to it. If the time comes that you must reveal yourself as imposters, you'll have many an impassioned foe to face. You'll know you've reached the right place when you meet the priest who calls himself Mangoth. He protects the blood. It is he who you must ultimately defeat. Gods, Death Knights, this is dreadful news. Worse than I could have expected. Death Knights are a terrible sign, Source Hunter. Historically, they indicate their maker's intention to wage total war. Death Knights are impervious to attack, you see. The perfect soldiers. We must learn all we can about Leandra's plans for the army she's building. Fortunately, you seem to have found a crucial piece of the puzzle. A spell that will make her dreaded knights vulnerable to attack. Excellent work, Source Hunter. Simply excellent. Dreadful news. My sister, the so-called conduit, seems to have sunk to deception and terror to swell her numbers. If I know Leandra, she's hidden her most valuable secrets deep within their ranks. Keep exploring, Source Hunter. Your efforts will bear fruit.
To sap a human to vapor.
Good to see you on the shelter plane. I hope it shall be my pleasure. Most certainly. Of all the wicked things, the one you'll have to redouble your efforts, my friend. You'll have...
How might I serve our mission? Ask, and I shall answer, if I can. Threads I weave, and tales I see. All will I tell.
Have you seen my magic box?
I hope your quest fares well, dear hunter. Ah, yes, that was a small fib on my part, I'm afraid. Zandalore is known as the Keeper of the Source, after all. And I didn't know how Source Hunters would react to my association with such a colorful character. By all means.
I wonder how much of a spark it takes to sap a human
Our
to
heroes have
vapor.
chosen fine vessels for their return. Mere humans humans, I'd have said but a little while ago, and yet they've managed to bring us together across space and time.
Space, time,
You know what a great
and a
joke.
frigid prison
I could
wasteland.
tell a joke or two.
Now
Free on
that
a
you
good
mention
day.
it, what did you do to Leandra to earn her icy ire, Icara?
Leandra and I have had our differences, but she herself would never have sent me to that frozen hell. Something or someone has taken hold of me. I'm sure of it.